Hello everyone, welcome back to another episode of r/Entitled People. In today's episode, sister cusses out my daughter at her wedding. Entitled brother. Neighbor wants neat hedges. Before we get started, make sure to subscribe so you will never miss a video. So let's get started. Sister cusses out my daughter at her wedding. My daughter, we'll call her T, came over to the house to do some laundry and she was asking what the hell is Aunt Liz's problem? I asked what she meant and she explained how my sister had posted on Facebook that she and her husband were going away for their 15th wedding anniversary. T said that she had sent Aunt Liz a congrats post and Liz responded back with very funny. So I sat her down and I told her what I'm about to tell you. When T was 4, Liz had called us and said that she was getting married in a few months. She and I were doing the typical girly squee sounds and oh that's wonderful stuff that sisters usually do. When we calmed down, she asked if T would be willing to be the flower girl. I asked her and she said yes, enchanted I'ma be flower girl, and started running around and pretend flying like she was a new member of the Justice League or something. I told Liz we need to work on it, but she's in. About a month later, the invites came in. In them it was stated that Liz did not want any children under the age of 17 there and explained why. The reasons were sound: bored children, potential disruptions, etc., so I understood them. I did, however, have one concern. I called her and asked, hey, just got the invites, me and the boys will be there, but Hubs has a business trip that month and can't make it. Do you still want T as your flower girl? Liz replied, oh god yes. She's too cute to not have her. I shrugged and said, well it'll be the four of us, consider this your RSVP. She said great. See you there. We hung up and I went online and made the reservations. A room for me and T, and an adjoining room for the boys, Ron, 19, and Carl, 17. Names changed and all that. Fast forward to the weekend of the wedding. The venue is a 6-hour drive for me and I had to get out there on a Friday for the Saturday wedding. Since I had to wait for Carl to get out of school, we got a late start on Friday and we got there around 10 p.m. I got out and checked into the hotel room and I texted Liz. They were still at the venue and would be there at least another hour or two taking care of details, so we drove over. We got there and it was the usual pre-wedding chaos. Liz was getting things to her liking and honestly going a bit bridezilla. She saw us first, beamed and came over. However, when she got closer and saw who was in my party, she blew up. Why did you bring her? She screamed. I said, but you wanted her for. I was cut off and Liz went into a complete screaming meltdown about how this was her day, she didn't want children there and how dare you bring a child to my wedding, while looking right at T, and then stormed off screeching curses into the night. I was done. T was crying and saying, but I wanted to be flower girl in between sobs, and Ron and Carl looked like they wanted to kill their aunt, and at that moment I wasn't sure I wanted to stop them. I picked up T and tried to comfort her and herded the crew back to the car and we drove back to the hotel. I was seriously considering just packing up the car and heading home. I told the boys that Ron was being the level-headed one. Mom, it's a 6-hour drive and we're all too tired and pissed to make that drive right now. We'd get in around 5 to 6 in the morning depending on rest stops and bathroom breaks. Do you really want to do that since we have a nice hotel room for the night? How about we go back to the hotel, get a night's sleep and head back in the morning? I grudgingly admitted that he had a point. Carl piped up, Mom, I've got another idea. I was waspish and I kinda snapped, what is it? Carl looked up from his phone and sheepishly said, well, T's pretty upset. Which was true. It's been 15 minutes and she's still sobbing I wanna be flower girl over and over in the back seat. Carl continued, there's a county fair that just started tonight. Carnival rides, petting zoo, games, that sort of thing. I snapped, so? Carl is made of sterner stuff. He didn't wither under my anger and continued on. We have the hotel until Sunday morning. Why not spend the night here, go to the fair tomorrow, and then go home on Sunday like we planned? Give T something to think about other than Aunt Liz's freakout, let her have some fun, and we all could use a mom and the gang outing right about now. I calmed down a bit and said an idea not without merit. I looked at T in the rearview and said, what about it, T? You want to go to the fair instead of the wedding? She sobbed, I want to be flower girl. Carl piped up, they're going to have cotton candy and deep-fried Oreos. The crying stopped, there was one last sniffle and an exhausted but determined I want to go to the fair. So that's what we did and we had fun. Liz could have her bridezilla day and that was that. Except that it wasn't. We had all turned our phones off since we knew some calls would be coming in and we just could not be bothered to deal with it. When we got back to the hotel, my mom and dad were there. They lit into me about how T was supposed to be there as flower girl and we just blew my sister and her special day off. Mom, Dad. I said. You know how the invites said no children? I called Liz when we got ours and I asked if she still wanted T as a flower girl. She said that she did. So I brought T to the venue last night and Liz flipped out about how dare I bring a child to her special day. Carl, bless his I can't function without an iPhone in his hand heart, pulled up the video. I didn't know he had recorded it, but he was able to catch the final how dare you bring a child to my wedding. I lit into them back. So if T's supposed to be there as flower girl but not be there because she's a child, how am I supposed to pull that off? We went to the fair to calm T down and so she'd have something happy to remember and hopefully forget that Liz cussed her out. 2. Horror. Face. Mom and Dad went quiet, then apologized. They said that they were going to have a word with Liz when she got back from the honeymoon and then had a nice chat with T about the things she saw and did. We drove home Sunday morning and that was that. Story over, back in the present. T was blown away. Mom, would I be a bad person for unfriending her and blocking her? I said no and we went back to enjoying some mom and daughter time. Your sister is a crazy one. Did she expect your daughter to only be there specifically for the couple minutes of going down the aisle as the flower girl? How did the follow-up go with your sister when she got back? Feel like I'm missing that part. The point is mom and her children are focusing on themselves. Aunt Liz is a mess, details are juicy but fuel anger. Way to go, OP. Absolutely this. Feels like we're missing a lot of the story that happened afterwards. And this why you don't ask little kids to be at your child-free wedding. You get stressed, you forget, and then you have no flower girl. Yes, T, you can block your aunt and forget all about her. What is Liz's problem? To have not mentioned it for 15 years I would assume is I'm Liz that T forgot, but then why hell would Liz make that reply to T good wishes? Why would she cuss T out and still expect her to be flower girl? I don't understand any of Liz's moves. I really want to know what happened when your sis got back. Please. Funny, how 15 years ago was SM able to record a video on iPhone, considering the fact first iPhone was released 2007 and you couldn't record videos with it. 15 years ago was 2008. And some people say iPhone instead of smartphone because it is more known that the first smartphone was made in 1994, which was the IBM's SPC. Smartphones started using 3G in the year of 2000, and I am pretty sure a lot of phones had cameras back then. So it is pretty much possible. The first iPhone to be able to record came out in 2009, so yeah, a bit of a stretch. Plus the conversation she had with her sons doesn't seem believable to me. Entitled brother. I have a twin brother close to mid-30s both, and I had paid and taken care of him for 6 years now and never asked him back for any money. Now I want to part ways and look after my own life. He's never had a job and never tried to get any because all these jobs are beneath him. What makes me sick is that with all these things I've done he still calls me selfish and that I only think about myself. He is an extremely toxic person in my life and causes me tremendous anxiety. The problem is that he was always the favorite one in the family and he always feels entitled to premium quality, because that is how he was raised. I grew up having what he didn't want. I have told him repeatedly for 6 years to get a job, to start somewhere, and he always said, "Shut the F***ck up. You know nothing." This year I am moving away from him and now he threatens to take fentanyl overdose. My mom also thinks I'm the bad guy, and if I go on vacations without him she always tries to make me feel bad and guilty. What would you do in my situation? Anyone else in a similar position? Edit. Thank you all so much, you goddamn beautiful people, for your thoughts and advice. It meant a lot to me to get some fresh perspective. Let mommy pay for him. You move like you want and live your life. She's 69 years old, so she won't be able to do that either, sadly. She is retired. Let him move back in with mommy. If he threatens suicide again, alert the authorities. Don't fall for his emotional blackmail or let him hurt himself. But not your problem. My fear is that I will find him dead, overdosed, and there will be no time to alert anyone. But I get your point. Thank you. Not your circus, not your monkey. Let him know if he threatens to OD, you will call emergency services. TBH, I don't even know if he is serious or just acting to force me to be his cash bank. I can't tell. I did have a psychiatrist talk to him and she said she didn't notice anything. So maybe he's good at acting and he managed to trick her, or he is acting and trying to trick me. But he keeps saying, every once in a while, that he's got the fentanyl ready and he won't make it to 40. If you don't do as I want, then I will kill myself is a classic manipulation/control technique. There might even be a failed attempt where, miraculously, he gets saved in the nick of time or failed to take a fatal amount. I'd been on the receiving end myself, and to be blunt, if he chooses to do it, it's up to him, it isn't your problem. He is a grown-up and is responsible for his own actions and for the consequences of his actions. I received a phone call from a controlling partner saying I've taken an overdose. My response was, then don't call me, call an ambulance, and hung up. That may sound harsh, but it was needed after the previous few times she done this. You can report that he has repeatedly made threats to kill himself to the appropriate authorities and leave it in their ball court. OP. At some point in time, the major toxic dependency and financial responsibility bond has to be severed, and I think you know it. He wants to be kept brother so he can glide through life without a care. This is way beyond not normal. You need to continue making plans to get as far away as possible from this situation. Let the rest of the family handle the situation, as they are just as toxic as your brother. Of course the family is giving you a hard time because your leaving would place the burdens completely on them. It is okay to feel guilty, that is natural. What is not natural is your relationship to your brother. Do what you know and need to do. Wishing a wonderful and free life for you that is eagerly waiting on you. You've gotten good advice, but may I add, as you get close to moving, but before telling him, get your personal and financial papers and anything that's valuable or a keepsake and get them out of the home. Once you tell him your plan, he may steal or destroy things. So people who can't do for themselves, but keep cursing and yelling at others, it tends to be projection. The jobs aren't beneath him. He is the inferior one, and deep down he knows that. But you've made it easier for him to not care. Now that you're leaving, he has to figure out how to change overnight. And he doesn't want to. If he does OD on fentanyl, rest assured he required help you or lack expertise in giving. He needs a therapist, not a family member. However, in my experience, toxic people like him never OD on purpose. He just needs to be left alone to take his medicine. Go no contact with your mother and brother for a long while. If they never talk to you again, something tells you you'll be all the better for it. Not your problem. Move on with your life and take out a life insurance policy on him. Doesn't work. They don't pay out for suicides. Neighbor wants neat hedges. Our neighbor's garden backs on to the side of ours. He likes to keep the hedges really well trimmed. We're slightly more trim them when we can, but we don't mind the wild look type people. The conflict comes in because when we neglect our side, the hedge gets too wide for him to reach from his side, so any branches that grow up higher than he has cut makes it look messy from his side. He has come over a couple of times to ask us to trim our side. We have always obliged, we want to be good neighbors. But this most recent time really annoyed me. He came over when I was home with the baby and said that the hedge was getting messy again and could we trim it. I said it was on our to-do list, but since we have a baby we haven't been able to do the jobs in the garden that we want to do, e.g. tend to the veggie patch, let alone trim the hedge that we don't mind being untrimmed. But we'd try to get to it. He didn't seem that pleased with my answer, but he left. When my husband came home he went out and did it that afternoon again. We try to be good neighbors. This guy came out and started really patronizingly telling my husband where to cut the hedge from his garden. "Oh, that's nearly it, lad, just a bit more here, etc." Not a single word of thanks. My husband started turning the chainsaw on while the guy was talking to cut him off, which was hilarious. Did I mention it's our hedge? Needless to say, we're not going to try as hard to be as good neighbors next time if he can't even say thank you when we have taken time out of our evening to cut a hedge we don't care about for his benefit. Bushes should look bushy, not like cardboard boxes painted green. Plus Babe likes to pick the leaves and hit bushes, and it's not as much fun when they're tiny leaves all packed together. But I want to live in Minecraft. /off to punch a tree to get wood. Have you tried tying and braiding branches together on your side into random shapes? Say you're training it into a topiary but never tell him what you're aiming for? Ooh, excellent idea. I might also let my daughter decorate the branches for Christmas and Easter. I saw a hedge once cut into the shape of a giant hand flipping the bird. I think OP should aim for that and leave it as a surprise for the neighbor. Being a good neighbor shouldn't constitute trimming hedges just because some anally retentive Jobsworth likes to bother people. You're a better neighbor than I'll ever be. I'd tell him that he can come trim it himself as long as he cleans up the trimmings. He'd want to be round every other week if we suggested that. No way we're giving him access to our garden. Plus, like I said, we prefer the more wild look. I think I'd have dropped a few F-bombs if I was your husband. Or started cutting down the hedge completely. Too much trimming or hedging isn't good for the wildlife or your planned topiary. You don't have to actually plan any topiary, although a set of swans across a wavy lake might be as good as a middle finger. Or a reclining phallus. I know we have some hedgehogs that have a root through that hedge. We had a neighbor who told us to trim both sides of the hedge between our yards. That was because the previous owner of our house did it. I offered to lend them our electric hedge trimmer so they could do their side. They were not happy with that answer but did it anyway. Inform him that you are encouraging the hedges to grow a bit taller as it will provide a better backdrop for family portraits, and that you insist that he stop trimming anything visible from your yard. If you made it to the end of the video, thanks for watching. Don't forget to like, subscribe and share, and we will see you in the next video.